Good afternoon, everyone. I am so happy to be here. Again, my name is Dr. Marc Valitutto, kin+kind's head veterinarian. I really do hope all of you are staying nice and warm and cozy alongside all of your pet companions during this winter season. Myself, it's just been so cold. I can't believe it. Especially in New York City, we have been hit with a bit of an onslaught of winter weather with snow and sleet. And it's a little bit, unnerving because I want to take my puppy out and go play. Some of you may know Jessie, my 7-month-old boxer. And all I want to do is take her outside. And all she wants to do is go outside and play. But there are some dangers that all of us should be aware of to make sure that our pets are perfectly healthy and safe. So I'm extremely excited to be here with all of you this afternoon to discuss winter care with your pets and how to make sure that they're all safe and sound. So I do encourage anyone who is watching this show, watching this live stream event, to go ahead and throw questions in the chat. And any point I may stop and respond, or at the very end of this presentation, this live stream event, we can go through all of the questions that you guys have. So again, I'm pretty excited to be here, and let's get this started. All right, so just to remind you, some of you may not have seen our old live stream event, but again, my name is Dr. Marc Valitutto, and I am the head veterinarian for kin+kind. It's a really exciting job for me because I get to take part in helping to develop products that are safe and natural for your pets. And this, of course, is Jessie, my boxer, my 7-month-old boxer, and some might call it a COVID puppy, and indeed she is. I don't know if any of you guys saw that really cool little video that we had playing right before the live stream event, but there's a boxer that looks just like her, and my heart completely melted when I watched it. Anyway, moving on. So I graduated from UPenn 15 years ago and have been practicing ever since. And I have been a lot of my training was with small animals, dogs and cats, as well as large animals, horses, sheep, goats, what have you. And since that time, I've also been working in the field all over the entire world. So I did my training with the Bronx Zoo, and I traveled all throughout Asia, Africa, Southeast Asia, working on different species, especially the giant panda. So actually, right before COVID isolation hit, I was spending about a year and a half in China teaching the veterinarians, working alongside them to determine what are the health parameters of giant pandas in the wild. So this is some photos that you could see here of us working on pandas that are in the mountains of Sichuan, giving them injections, well-trained animals that are really responsive to the work that we had to do. One of the cool things that I was doing out there in Bhutan, the Himalayas of Bhutan, China, Sichuan Mountains, and all over Southeast Asia, one thing that I found to be the most resounding and the most rewarding thing is that the knowledge that I had from working with domestic species, dogs and cats in particular, in the US was completely applicable and desirable to the veterinarians and the people in these various countries that I worked in. And so in addition to being able to work with these wild animals, I had to help train and determine ways to protect your pets. And even dogs in the streets that are loose, cats in the street, the feral animals, they're rampant in a lot of these places that don't have the finances to be able to control this. So for me, again, as I said, extremely rewarding. And of course, part of my job in the US is taking care of pets, so dogs and cats. And I have a nice clientele of family and friends and others that always want me to look at their pets. These right here are my parents' boxers. They absolutely love it. And they have a lot of Yorkies too, by the way, in Staten Island. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this. We have top winter concerns. I want to know from you, whoever is joining us this afternoon, what are some of the things that you know that are extremely important to be concerned about in the winter for your pets? This could be dogs, cats, what have you, anything that you can think of, even wild animals or your pocket pets. What are some things that we are concerned about? Go ahead and just throw it in the chat, and we'll see what you guys come up with. I'll give you a second. One of the things, this video is kind of funny watching this dog, slip his way through. But it is important that you are concerned that you don't actually tear a tendon. So do be careful of ice. So some of the things that I wanted to talk about and the top winter concerns that I usually see wherever you are in the world is hypothermia amongst them. Frostbite, which some of you guys have said on social media already. Joint pain or arthritis, especially for our older geriatric specimens. Respiratory viruses. This is just like you and me. Especially when winter hits, cold weather, our immune system goes down, and respiratory illnesses are a big concern. Toxins and irritants. This is, for me, probably one of the biggest concerns that we see a lot of patients coming into the hospital as a result of winter changes. And then nutrition. There are things that we have to be cognizant of because of changes in activity, always due to the winter. All right, so we're going to get through this, and we're going to go one by one through each one of these topics. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw it up in the chat, and we will get to these at the end of the presentation, or I might answer them in a later slide, actually. Okay, so let's start with hypothermia. And I did want to give a shout out to our media team who has been working so diligently to create a beautiful presentation. And I absolutely love this photo. This dog is gorgeous, and the background, everything. I love it so much. Okay, hypothermia. Hypo meaning low, thermia meaning temperature. So it has to do with the body temperature going too low. The temperature of a dog and a cat is roughly around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, up to 103, actually. I actually don't recall what the translation is to Celsius, but we can get that information to you. But there's a difference in your pet. We all know not all pets are the same. There are many different types of breeds and even mixed breeds with long hair, short hair, no hair. Chinese short-haired dogs. There's a Boston Terrier, Chow Chow. All of these have different responses to the weather, changes in cold weather or even hot weather, which we'll probably get into this summer. Short dogs, short cats. And I know there's some short cat breeds out there nowadays, but an animal that is particularly close to the ground, that doesn't have long legs to keep it from rubbing against the surfaces, they are also prone to getting hypothermia because of the touching, the tactile surface between them and the cold ground, like corgis, French bulldogs. And this little Maltese, so tiny. You could also imagine that an animal that is extremely small is going to have a much more difficult time maintaining their body heat. And this is the same across the board with wild animals too. Mice versus elephants, mice versus whales. They're going to have a much more difficult time maintaining that body heat. And so, mice, what they do to compensate is they eat tremendous amounts of food just to burn, and maintain their temperature levels. Okay. And then, of course, age differences. Small dogs, puppies, and older dogs, geriatric animals, they are going to also have a very difficult time regulating their body temperature. And so hypothermia is something that we are absolutely concerned about in these types of animals, these pets of yours. All right. And then finally, body condition. Obese animals, thin animals, active animals, all of these different things that we just discussed come into play when we determine what animals are most susceptible to hypothermia. And for me, as a veterinarian, the thing that I also really am concerned about is the animal's disease status, because different diseases also contribute to poor or dysregulation of the body temperature, also making an animal quite susceptible to hypothermia. Some of the diseases that I get concerned at include heart disease or kidney disease. There are temperature regulators in the kidney, and when that kidney is diseased, they can no longer regulate their body temperature appropriately. And endocrine diseases. Endocrine meaning hormone diseases. Hormones like diabetes or insulin, hypothyroidism. I'm sure many of you guys know about this one because this is both diabetes and hypothyroidism. Pretty common human diseases out there, and they are definite contributors to hypothermia. Cushing's diseases. This is an adrenal disease, a disease from a gland that lives right next to your kidney and regulates a lot of different hormones. Cushing's disease is a disease of too much steroid. And so there are a lot of body changes, but also poor regulation of heat. Finally, arthritis. Any of you guys who have arthritis or know someone who has arthritis, I'm sure you've heard them say, I could feel it in my bones. It's going to get cold. The temperature is changing. The weather is changing. And they're not wrong. And I'll get to that in on that slide. Okay, so what can we do about hypothermia? How can we prevent this? How can we avoid problems when you go outside? Everyone has to take their dog out for a walk. So there are things. Attire, wearing the appropriate clothing, the things that a lot of owners really like to do, especially in New York City where I'm from, is some of the things that we look at with that is what kind of clothing and how do we wear it? Obviously, it's going to be dependent on what the temperature is because we don't want to actually overheat the dog, nor do we want to underheat your pet. And so the thing that I look at is cover up that belly because the belly actually is an area that is usually exposed with no fur covering. Keep it dry. One of the things that is particularly important here is that when you're out and maybe it's raining or it's a wet snow and they're rolling around, that coat that you put on your pet can get really wet. And that can be a massive source of cold item touching your animal or your pet, rather, your companion, and lead to further hypothermia. So if you have one of those situations, bring an extra coat if you have. And then, of course, like I said earlier, weather appropriate layers depending on what the temperature actually is. Some of you who are living in more suburban or rural communities have the opportunity to let your dog or your pet, your companion, stay outside all year. In fact, when I grew up, a lot of my pets did actually also stay outside. But it was important that we created homes for them that they can go into and stay warm. There are some things that are incredibly important about the shelter that you create, though. And these include things like ensuring they have a door to hide away or having insulation. But you can see in this photo, where this pug is sitting, there's no door there. There's no door to protect him from the elements, from the wind. And, it's minimally insulated there. So this one, there's a lot of products out there, believe it or not, that are pre-made homes. Or if you're creative, you could do it yourself. But creating a nice little home that they can get into and hide away from the elements, but also having the appropriate ventilation so they could breathe. So also, water is a key thing. And, I'm a little embarrassed to say when I was younger, I would go outside in the mornings and I'd bring water to my pet. And in the wintertime, that water bowl would be frozen. And so I learned from that situation and worked my hardest to ensure that my parents were helping us getting little heaters for the bowls so that way the water did not freeze. And in fact, there are water heater bowls out there specifically made for winter watering for your companions. A warm bed is always key, and as ventilation, like I already said, and a heavy door flap alongside insulation. Like this meme that I love, it was cold, so I made an igloo. But this little puppy is really doing the right thing because he is insulating himself. The level of insulation is like 7 inches thick, and he's doing the exactly right thing. I would die if this was my house. Okay. One of the things that I think is also important, if you have the opportunity with your pets to allow them to defecate or urinate inside the house, do it. And my parents do that right now, actually. They have probably 5 Yorkies at home in Staten Island, and it's very cold outside, and none of them want to go out there. And so all of them are actually trained to go potty on potty pads. And it's really helpful, you know, they go and they just wrap it up, and none of them have made accidents in the house off of the potty pads. So it's really nice like that. I'm not so sure that's so good for the large pets, but I have seen some large companions using the toilet bowl. If any of you are really good at that training level, do what you can. Okay, frostbite. This was the second on our list. This is something that I think goes a little bit unnoticed at first. And it's something that I do encourage a lot of you guys out there to be cognizant of. So, you know, when your pets are walking outside, they have a nice callus layer on their paw. But that callus layer can only take them so far. Usually it helps prevent them from feeling anything super sharp and avoids them from feeling the immediate effects of the temperature of the ground, so hot weather, cold weather. But prolonged exposure onto these surfaces is not so good and can actually cause significant damage to your pet. So what I'm looking at actually is the surface of the paw, the callus that has built up over time, especially if you're an older animal. If they're on that ground for a prolonged period, the tissue underneath that callus will die and be exposed to or turn into a frostbite situation. But you might not be able to see this for several days because the callus is just sitting there. And so your pet may or may not be limping a little bit, licking their paw, and you're not sure why because everything looks fine. But maybe 2, 3, 4 days later, that callus layer will slough off and it'll expose a severe ulcerated condition. And so that's something that you really want to be cognizant of. Puppies, though, have no calluses yet. And if they're running around in this weather, they can have frostbite immediately. So please, please, please pay attention to how long your puppies are out there. But another thing that you should be concerned about is chemical burns. So there are things out there that we use, more and more different types of chemicals beyond simple salt, sodium chloride, to melt the snow, melt the sleet. And so this stuff, you can imagine, was also going to melt or burn your pet's paws, especially if they have a little cut in there. So be careful when they're walking all over that salt and wipe their feet. This is a photo here of strike through a frostbite. So you can see the black callus that's all around. But several days later, there's a little ulcerated exposure of tissue that was essentially burned, frostbitten because of the cold weather. What can you do? Wear protection. So pet booties are fantastic. They cover the feet up. You could wear socks too to help make sure things don't slip. Some dogs do great in them. Some don't do so well. My puppy hates booties. In fact, she will not go outside. She will stand there with boots on her feet and not move at all. But every time I come home after a walk, all of her feet get wiped. And she's so used to this at this point where she just stands there, does not go anywhere else in the house. And one by one, she lifts the feet up that she knows is going to be next. And we wipe her feet very thoroughly to get rid of all that salt, all that debris, anything that's a concern, especially in the winter. Clipping paw fur. This is also a really good idea, especially for the dogs that have long fur, because lots of things like to get caught up in there. But also ice. Ice is a big deal, and that's, again, prolonged exposure to cold items for their paws. Finally, a product is available. There are many products out there, actually. Some of you may or may not have seen this on Chewy, Amazon, or whatever pet stores you may go to that offer a way that you can actually ensure that the paw and the nose too stays nice and moist. So when you don't use these products, like lotion for your hands, they start to crack, and my hands too. And so if my hands are all cracked up, and then there's new crevices that build up in there, and then I'm walking on this ground where there's tons of salt down there, that's going to burn. So we use products like kin+kind's nose and paw stick that actually help moisturize and maintain a sealed layer to help provide that extra level of protection. Okay, this is my dog. Everyone take a look. She is beautiful, and I won't believe anything else that you say otherwise. But she's also a little crazy. This was her in upstate New York, and it was freezing out there, like 25 degrees Fahrenheit. And she was running around, did not want any shoes, and it was freezing. She was shivering, but did not want to come in. All she wanted to do was run around and play, no matter how cold it was. So the point here is you have to be the mature one and tell your dog, tell your pet, it's time to come in because this could be dangerous for your feet, regardless of how much they want to play or how much they say, it's fine, everything's going to be fine, because my dog, Jessie, does not care. Okay, joint pain. All right, so this is something that is a concern for our geriatric patients for sure, but also some younger animals too might suffer from some inflammation to their joints and also get some damage. So you may remember, anyone who may have seen our previous live stream events, we talked a little bit about arthritis. And so you can see on this picture on the left, that's a nice, beautiful, healthy knee. But on the right, you see all these changes to the bone structure. You might see some little white hyper opaque areas that are very white in between the two bones. And that is actually more bone that shouldn't be there. And that's what happens to bones during arthritis, is they grow all these extra bony pieces off of the normal bone. And so you could think about it when you're walking around and trying to have that smooth, beautiful glide with your joints. Animals with arthritis don't have that. And it could be quite painful when they're walking around. And that's why many of you who have companions with arthritis know that they don't want to go very far, and you have to give them lots and lots of medicine to help smooth things along. But like I said earlier in the beginning, I can feel it in my bones. This cold weather is coming, but it's the truth. The arthritic pain is exacerbated in winter. Why? Because muscle spasms, the cold weather, the muscles pull, and the muscles are attached to the end of these bones, and they start pulling on these joints, and that's quite painful already because there's already so much inflammation there. The cold weather is going to cause something we call vasoconstriction. So your vessels are going to shrink down, which is going to cause even further pain because low blood flow to those joints. And on top of that, you have joint fluid inside of your joints to help lubricate things to move. And that just gets slower and more viscous. And so things are not going to be so nice and smooth in that joint. And then, of course, weaker bones. And this is associated a little bit because there's no vitamin D. There's no UV light that's coming to help convert vitamin D into a usable form. And then, of course, you have no calcium then to build and strengthen these bones. So it's a big deal, arthritis, and I'm not looking forward to that point in my life, but I know it's coming. I run a lot, and it's good to always be aware, especially for your companions, to pay attention to arthritic changes that are affected by winter weather. What can we do though? All these things. What can we do? How can we avoid problems going outdoors? So playtime inside. It's fun. I have a very small apartment, and my pet Jessie, she loves running back and forth inside the house, and we play fetch for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, several times a day, because she's kind of nonstop. But it helps provide her the energy that outlet that she needs, and it's unfortunate that they can't go outside, but you know something, as long as you're giving your companion the time of day indoors, let them run around, get them the energy that they need to get off their back. Indoor potty training, what we discussed earlier, especially for your small dogs that have that ability and opportunity, go for it, train it to help them avoid going outside. And then, of course, try supplements. So there's a few things that we had discussed here, especially arthritis and joint inflammation. There are products out there. Like I mentioned, Chewy, Amazon, there's many, many, many different products and many different companies that are selling products to help your pets, especially during the winter season with arthritis or other joint pain. kin+kind sells a product called Hip and Joint, which I personally use, and I tried to convince my friends to use too because I think it's great. The ingredients in the product is so simple. It's just turmeric, coconut powder. I use this. It's a good way to help reduce all of your inflammation. So reduce joint inflammation for sure, encouraging joint lubrication, improving the blood flow. These are all things that we said are exacerbated or worsened in the wintertime because of arthritis, and then strengthen the bones. Okay. One of the things I did want to mention though about the kin+kind products is that, I mean, the reason why I like them, the reason why a lot of my friends might use them is because it's just a natural product. There's not a lot of other things in there, chemicals, synthetic things, and that's one of the things I truly enjoy about it, is because you can't get away from all the synthetic products, but if you can at least reduce and know what you're giving to your companion, why not? Go for it, honestly. Okay. All right, let's move on. Respiratory issues. This is something that all of you are exposed to in the winter. All of yourselves, myself included, we all have issues with respiratory disease in the winter. And of course, everyone is, I'm sure, a little concerned about COVID-19, coronavirus. That's a big deal right now. And yes, we are spiking. And in part, it's because everyone's indoors and there's some things going on indoors during the winter season that help lead us to being able to contract respiratory virus. And your companions are no different, cats and dogs included, okay? So your immune system is lowered during this time period. You have less exposure to UV light, which helps with your immune system from the sun, but also the weather is so cold and your body winds up working so hard just to stay warm. And instead of actually protecting themselves, so you're diverting energy to keep your body warm as opposed to keep your body safe. Humidity at home is also a big deal. A lot of you may or not know what happens in the winter is your heaters go on. And when that heater goes on, it dries all of the air in your house. And so why is that a big deal? Your throat, your trachea, your windpipe is long, as well as your companion's windpipes. They require a certain level of moisture to stay active. When it dries out, it gets actually a little bit harder for you to cough up phlegm, to have all the debris that you breathed in to come back out of that pipe, out your nose in the form of a booger, you know? You just don't have that ability. Things dry up in there, and some of the cells that line the trachea, that line the windpipe, die off. And so by providing the humidity, we're able to prevent that death. But when things do slow down, all those pathogens that you've breathed in go further down into your lungs. And then they wind up causing things like pneumonia, or you're able to contract those viruses for upper respiratory diseases like influenza or even COVID. Okay, so these are things that you really do want to look out for yourselves, and not just your pets and your companions. But ensuring that the humidity in your house is good is an essential component for health during winter. Okay, so what can we do? What I already said, humidify. I have 4 humidifiers running in my house. Thank gosh, this is the one of the first years I have not had a cold knock on wood, and I don't want one. But by providing myself with the humidity, I think part of the reason why I haven't had a cold is because I don't leave my house anymore because of COVID isolation. The most I go out is really just to play with my Jessie outside safely and to ensure that she's not too cold. But we have a lot of humidity and we maintain things at a good level. Clean air filters. This is also a big deal in the winter. You are supposed to change your filters every 3 months at the very least, especially if you live in a high rise, but also getting those air purifiers for your house. Because things do get stale in the winter, because the humidity levels are low, because your immune system is low, because your windpipe has low moisture. Get those air filters, get an air purifier, because you can help reduce the pathogens that are floating around the air. And then ensuring that your humidity level is maintained around 45 to 65%. And this is something that is actually the level that you'll see in the summertime. It's around that. And that's why it's one of the reasons why you're not suffering so much from an illness during the summer season. And the same thing for your pets. I did want to mention canine influenza is a big deal right now. It's rampant going throughout the entire world. Also originated in Asia only a few years ago, believe it or not. And a lot of you may already know that your veterinarians have recommended influenza vaccines for your dogs. Okay, what else can we do? Boosting your immunity. And a lot of you already do this for yourselves, immune boosts in the winter. And that's by taking the appropriate vitamins. All of these actually work in conjunction with each other. Vitamin A, all the different vitamin Bs, C, D, and E, and zinc. These are things that we really are looking to ensure that our immune system is on hyperdrive in the winter. Okay, so moving on to toxins and irritants. Some of you may or may not know antifreeze is a big deal. And this is something a lot of veterinarians have been harping on for years. Antifreeze, that green solution, sometimes blue, to help your cars run in the winter so things don't slow down. But it is also a very sweet, sweet liquid. And probably sometimes the only source of liquid for quenching thirst in the winter. And so dogs have a tendency to be attracted to it and drink it. And it is deadly in certain amounts. So something you have to be cognizant of. It can lead to kidney failure and it can be fatal. So the dose that is toxic, half a tablespoon or more for your cats and small dogs. 3 tablespoons or more for medium-sized dogs like French bulldogs and corgis and up, and then half a cup or more for larger dogs. And this is a half a cup is a very easy volume to find outside and to lap up for any dog. So be careful and be cognizant of where you're walking your dog and what they're getting into. I cannot harp on this one enough. Okay, another tip, what can we do? Stay away from the city water. Be cognizant of vehicles parking where the antifreeze may be dripping. And also, if you are playing outside, bring some water so that way you can handle their thirst. Finally, nutrition. Things change in the winter. Outdoor dogs, you need to provide them with the food, because the calories that they are burning just to stay warm is a big deal, as opposed to dogs that are indoors. And if you are indeed playing with them less, not going on such long walks, they're not going to need as much calories, and so they may be prone to obesity. So feed your dog appropriately. Give them the right amount of calories. Change things up. Talk to your veterinarian to change up how much food that you should be feeding them based on what their activity level is. And then, of course, consider the supplements that are out there, the immune boosting supplements, the arthritis, inflammation supplements, and then avoid the table scraps, because we are all indoors, we're all eating. There's a lot of holidays during the winter season, and your dog is always at the table waiting for those extras. So, to avoid the obesity and avoid those obesity-related diseases, you do want to be careful of the table scrap and the over food provisions. All right, so Now, we are going to get into question time, and I wanted to just answer a couple questions first that we had already from our social media pages on Instagram and Facebook. So, my dog shivers outside. Should I still walk her? You know something? Like I said earlier, if you have the opportunity to be able to train them indoors, do so. But if your dog is only going out there really quick, just for a quick potty break, keep it simple. That's important. They may shiver for sure if they don't have the ability to go defecate or void inside the house. Go outside really quickly and do that walk. But if your dog likes those long walks, provide that extra comfort. Provide them with the attire that they need. Some of them might need a full body coat. Some of them might need shoes. Some of them might need everything. But you do the right thing for your pet and your companion when you have to go outside. Do cats get cold in the winter? You may have seen cats sitting at the windowsill when it's freezing, or with the window wide open, or they're sitting underneath the heater. But yes, cats absolutely get cold in the winter, and it's a big deal for them as well, but they have a tendency to really self-regulate their body temperature. Some of them, not so smart. Some of them will sit at the window and stay there, and some of them will escape and just run outside rampantly in the winter and not realize how to get back in. So cats do get cold in the winter, and it is important to be providing for them just as much as your dogs. All right, so why don't we get into some of the questions that you guys have for me during this chat. So let me just open up our chat space and we can go through some of the questions all of you guys have had. Let's see. I'm going to type something out here. All right. So, one of the questions that actually someone had approached me with was something about what are some of the other toxins beyond antifreeze, beyond salt that my cat might be exposed to in the winter. And I think the biggest one for me is going to be the stuff that they are exposed to at the home, because everyone's home. There's a lot more activity. There's a lot more foods that are being made because of the winter holidays, and it's a little bit frightening because there's a lot of candy going around, and there's chocolate, and there's gum, and there's a lot of cleanups and spills. So there's things that you really ought to be looking out for that you're going to be doing more of. So cleaning more the products that you have outside. Maybe you have more chocolate or other forms of foods like onions and grapes and whatnot that you ought to be careful of. And then, of course, the human medicine that they may or may not get into. Another question that I know I had been asked in the past is wintertime bathing. How often should I bathe my pet in the winter? And this goes, is very much the same as the summer. You can bathe your pet as often as you want, as often as their body responds to it or needs it, as long as you're using the appropriate products that are pH balanced for your pets. Do not use human products on your pets because their skin pH is different, and using human products can dry their skin out. So I do encourage you guys, if they smell, wash them. Okay, let's get back to our talk, because I wanted to go through a few more things with you and wrap things up for this live stream event. All right, so winter care, what are the take-home messages that we have? Again, be cognizant of your pet's ability to regulate their body temperature. Big deal. Wear the clothes, wear the booties, whatever you think is important that in your area that you can do. So again, apparel is both functional and fun and fashionable. Let's not forget, that's probably one of the most important things here. Probably the only reason why I like to take my dog out in beautiful clothes that she hates anyway. Provide that extra attention to pets maintained outdoors. Insulation, warm water bowl, protection from the elements, as well as ventilation. Immunity boosters, get those supplements, vitamins, ensure that you're providing them with the appropriate vitamins and minerals to ensure that their immune system is working exceptionally well. And pay attention to those harmful winter chemicals like antifreeze and salts and anything at home that they may or may not be getting into. So with that, thank you all for joining me. That was a really fun talk, winter care for your pets. But we have more. We have more coming up. So in a month, we have a hip and joint health lecture or live stream event. So this one, I'm really concerned about because my joints are starting to ache just a little bit. So there's a lot of applicable inflammation, but a lot of you guys also have companions that have this afflicting your pets as well. The past ones that we have had, you are all welcome to go back and see on our website, on our Facebook page, and the few on our Instagram page, where you can see some of the Facebook Live events that we have already shared, including itchy pets, as well as supplements and diet for your companions. So please, 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 you're more than welcome to even go back to this very live stream event that we have just done today, and you can review some of the things that we talked about and ask questions as well. So I'll see you guys in a month. Thanks for joining. Have a wonderful day.